It wasn't long ago that I discussed what I believe to be the impending collapse of Warner Brothers Games. This is a company that has been struggling to release a major AAA success, with the likes of Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, and Multiverses having failed tremendously. Suicide Squad cost Warner Brothers roughly $200 million. Then Multiverses' failure cost the company another $100 million. And then combine that with upcoming projects that were struggling and have now since been canceled, and you're looking at what is one of the worst states that a AAA game publisher could be in. Beyond the failures and shutdowns of Multiverses and Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, rough tidings could be seen on the wall when Warner Brothers Games chief David Haddad exited. I have little doubt that he was ultimately ousted, given how epically he failed to deliver, financially speaking. And then right here we have Jason Schreier's article, who kind of investigated what went on behind the scenes and what's still going on behind the scenes, where he discussed Haddad's poor leadership, which is how sources kind of described his leadership style, where he just really had no idea what he was doing because he doesn't really even play games. And so it just took a while for developers to get any sort of communication from him when he would be asked simple questions about the direction a certain game's development should be headed in. And beyond that, we got kind of an update on studios like Monolith Productions and Warner Brothers Games Montreal and Avalanche Software, Rocksteady Studios, and what they were working on, with Monolith in particular having worked on a Wonder Woman game for quite some time. The Wonder Woman game started after another project that was supposed to be experimenting with procedural storytelling. After that got canceled in 2021, they started working on a Wonder Woman game, one that would try to implement a reimagined Nemesis System. That didn't go well. That idea got tossed for a more traditional action-adventure game. And as of the publishing of this article, which was back in February 7th, 2025, Wonder Woman's fate remained in question because of challenges following the changes in Monolith's leadership and issues surrounding the game's technology. Well, we're finally seeing the outcome of that, not entirely unexpected, but tragic nonetheless, with Jason Schreier reporting on February 25th, 2025, that Warner Brothers Games is shutting down Monolith Productions alongside Player First Games and Warner Brothers San Diego. This has since been confirmed by Warner Brothers Games in a statement that they provided to media outlets who reached out for comment. They said, quote, "We have had to make some very difficult decisions to structure our development studios and investments around building the best games possible with our key franchises: Harry Potter, Mortal Kombat, DC, and Game of Thrones. After careful consideration, we're closing 3 of our development studios: Monolith Productions, Player First Games, and Warner Brothers Games San Diego. This is a strategic change in direction and not a reflection of these teams or the talent that consists within them. The development of Monolith's Wonder Woman video game will not move forward, so Wonder Woman has been canceled officially. Our hope was to give players and fans the highest quality experience possible for the iconic character, and unfortunately, this is no longer possible within our strategic priorities. This is another tough decision, as we recognize Monolith's storied history of delivering epic fan experiences through amazing games. We greatly admire the passion of the 3 teams and thank every employee for their contributions. As difficult as today is, we remain focused on and excited about, let's talk about getting excited after utterly decimating storied studios who have done nothing but follow the commands of executives who had no idea what they were doing, and it's them who get punished for it. Excited about getting back to producing high-quality games for our passionate fans and developed by our world-class studios, and getting our games business back to profitability and growth in 2025 and beyond. I mean, there's the real truth of the matter. It's ultimately about profitability. It's about the cost of their piss-poor decisions in taking a franchise like Suicide Squad that features the entire Justice League and turning that into the most generic looter live service that you could make. The shutdown of Monolith in particular hurts because, they've really been at it for such a long time, with their first game release having come out all the way back in 1997. They've released some of the most beloved cult classic video games. The Fear series is a favorite of mine. And then beyond that, the Middle Earth series, which, actually took the Lord of the Rings IP and made a kick-ass video game out of it, one that still holds up today in many ways. We have seen what Monolith can do when they're given the time and resources and the support to cook. But instead of letting Monolith cook, what they did instead was continuously cancel their projects to the point where leadership at Monolith got fed up. So the head of Monolith, Kevin Stephens, for example, and most of his directors quit and started a new studio with rival EA because they got sick of how Warner Brothers games handled things and the way they got cold feet at every interesting project that a developer might come up with. And then they got cold feet with the Wonder Woman game, which has been struggling in development, but this has no doubt in part to do with the piss-poor leadership of David Haddad, who recently exited the company, but his leadership, based on what sources have been saying about it, has been a great source of turmoil within the company and its various game development studios. And this is not the first time that Warner Brothers has gotten cold feet about releasing a video game based on a superhero. So Warner Brothers Games Montreal, after the release of Gotham Knights, which saw tepid sales and critical reception, they eventually started working on a Flash video game, but after the movie of The Flash starring Ezra Miller flopped, Warner Brothers got cold feet and canceled the project. And so since then, this studio, Warner Brothers Games Montreal, were helping out on Wonder Woman. That's obviously no longer happening, while also working on a pitch for a new game based on Game of Thrones. To shut down Monolith after Warner Brothers Games continuously got in Monolith's way is a complete insult to the history of Monolith and everything they've given to gaming history. And to see them go out like this is just, Warner Brothers Games is just an utter disgrace. And then beyond Monolith Productions, another studio getting shut down is Player First Games, who are the developers of Multiverses. This result, unfortunately, isn't terribly surprising, but it sucks that Warner Brothers isn't willing to nurture studios with potential, especially after Warner Brothers acquired Player First Games last July with the confidence that they'd be able to take this Warner Brothers version of Super Smash Bros. And make it a huge success. But Warner Brothers accelerated the timeline of Multiverses' release. They weren't willing to delay the game as needed to ensure that it released in a complete and fleshed out state. And so that was ultimately a big part of why so many players dropped off of Multiverses shortly after launch. Not even a year passed since the acquisition of Player First Games before Warner Brothers decided to shut them down for good. Now, amidst all this, Warner Brothers Games has also been reaching out to employees, with JB Perrette, the CEO and president of global streaming and games for Warner Brothers Discovery, sending out a memo to employees where he talked about how disappointing 2024 was, and with major releases like Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League and Multiverses failing, even smaller releases like that Harry Potter Quidditch game that bombed as well. The memo also discussed how the direction moving forward for Warner Brothers Games is to focus on 4 key franchises: Harry Potter, Mortal Kombat, DC, and Game of Thrones. With DC in particular, they really want to focus on Batman, and Bloomberg, Jason Schreier's investigative report, noted that Rocksteady Studios has been designated to work on a full-on AAA single-player Batman game. So maybe this will be a return to form, but who knows at this point how Warner Brothers will end up sabotaging that. On the topic of the canceled Wonder Woman game, they said that the game no longer fell within our strategic priorities and are looking to repurpose talent where possible, but a lot of layoffs are going to happen alongside it, and so they may retain some talent and shuffle them around, but this is going to come at great cost when it comes to the talent within Warner Brothers Games. And then the big thing that Perrette emphasized was that they have to work towards regaining their credibility and swagger at producing great games. And then he continues right here that the product market fit and quality of too many of our new releases has really missed the mark. And whose fault is that? Who is the company that's hiring an executive that doesn't play games to run the games division? Who is the company with executives who are mandating that everything become a live service and that the focus be on mobile games and all these things that get in the way of the full potential of these incredible IPs achieving what they can do best when developers are left to cook and allowed to make the best game and the best genre for those specific IPs, instead of shoehorning everything into some kind of live service mold that may not necessarily fit that IP. Exhibit A being Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. That should have never been a live service to begin with. It doesn't work. But Perret insists that we need to and will do better for our fans first and foremost, and also because regaining that credibility is critical to us securing even more investment in games in the years to come. Getting our swagger back happens one high-quality game release at a time, and our financial credibility gets rebuilt one fiscal quarter at a time. That right there is the real motivation for these executives, the financial credibility. Delivering what we said we would deliver and no big negative surprises. Well, that begins with not sabotaging your own studios with dumb mandates that strictly seek profitability instead of maximizing the quality and fun of the games. Now, it'd be one thing if it felt like these executives learned their lessons, but they are talking about how they want to return to growing their mobile games revenue and how they want to double down on live services, which is just baffling when Hogwarts Legacy, the big AAA single-player release, was their most successful game release in a very long time. And their biggest flops were live services like Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League and Multiverses. So Perret talks about how they need to do better and are willing to do better, but refuse to learn any of the lessons that all of these recent developments and events should have taught them. And the ones who end up suffering are the likes of Monolith Studios, who, by the way, you may recall, pioneered the Nemesis System that was extremely beloved, but Warner Brothers Games decided to patent that system. And so no other studio can do their own take on this Nemesis System. And now we're learning that the studio that pioneered the Nemesis System and were experts of that system, Monolith, are getting shut down with the Wonder Woman game that was initially supposed to utilize the Nemesis System getting canceled. And so the Nemesis System currently, it's as good as dead. Warner Brothers does still have the patent for it, but I just don't foresee any game within the near future utilizing the system. And with the patent restricting the ability for other developers to kind of take inspiration from this and do their own take on it, it's just something that Warner Brothers has locked off. And this is just, it highlights how shitty it is when game companies patent game mechanics. That is just something that should never be patented, given that the entire history of video games and why games have evolved the way they have comes from developers borrowing ideas and then kind of evolving them, especially where, gameplay mechanics are concerned. And so you can see right here just how many people are mourning the death of Monolith and how the Nemesis System will likely go with it, at least for a long time. So you got a tweet right here that's garnered over 46,000 likes, people talking about how you're looking at a company that created the Nemesis System for video games. Everyone loves it. They refuse to allow anyone else to use it. They never use it again. Then they shut down a bunch of game developers who were intending to use it. Bravo, Warner Brothers. I mean, I couldn't have put it better myself. Hundreds of thousands of views and tons of interactions with tweets like this. Yeah, the internet is pretty mad. The gaming community is pretty mad about these recent shutdowns, not only because it is just in addition to all of the other studio shutdowns and layoffs we have seen, which we're getting sick and tired of, but just the short-term thinking of these companies and the destruction of storied studios alongside the death of patented game systems that should have never been patented in the first place. So yeah, I mean, you've got the likes of Bear McCreary, who is the composer for God of War, among many other just iconic works. He tweeted, after making 2 incredible Middle-earth games and developing an entirely unique Nemesis System for them, an entire studio shuttered seemingly because of factors and failures outside of their control. What a tragic waste. I hope these talented folks find a new home soon. I mean, we're getting to a point where people are in support of Warner Brothers Games getting sued for patenting the Nemesis System, then proceeding to shut down Monolith Studios and firing everyone who worked on it and not letting the system ever see the light of day unless Warner Brothers Games steams it. So Synth Potato continues, these mechanics belong to the people who made them. Folks who worked at Monolith should be free to open their own studio now and do what they want with that system in their own game and not tied by Warner Brothers Games. Unfortunately, I just don't know if that's how the letter of the law works. And Warner Brothers Games have the lawyers to be able to fend off any legal threats against the Nemesis System kind of being freed from their grasp. So yeah, this is just the travesty through and through. Warner Brothers games, I mean, honestly, they've always been among my least liked, just among the most hated game publishers because of the constant sabotaging they've done. They clearly have so much talent because amidst all that sabotaging, you've got developers like Monolith who have managed to output projects like the Middle Earth series. You've got developers who've managed to output games like Hogwarts Legacy, which, despite its flaws, I mean, it's a pretty solid foundation for a AAA single-player Harry Potter interactive experience. There's such talent within Warner Brothers games that I've just gotten so screwed over left and right by a publisher with no freaking clue how to handle these studios, how to nurture these studios, and how to think long-term. Warner Brothers games, I have zero faith that they'll be able to kind of bring it back, and just, they should be ashamed. They're an utter disgrace to the games industry. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is one man's take on the current situation involving Warner Brothers games and the shutdown of 3 of their studios, including one that especially hurts. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on the recent shutdowns of Warner Brothers Game Studios. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.